us on the Monday, November 9th edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. Pat Gonzalez along with Stuart Nodell. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. We're going to be talking about the brand new Ontario Regional Road Racing Series that was just announced last week by Sheena and Sandy Noche. Pro 6 Cycle GP Series at Calabogie Motorsports Park. But before we get into that, and feel free again to hop on the Q&A, send us your thoughts, your questions about the new series, road racing in general, whatever's on your mind tonight in the world of motorcycling and motorcycle road racing. But before that, Stuart Nodell's put together Nodell's notes. And Stuart, we've been following the MotoGP championship throughout the year, and it's come down to the 3 events in a row. The first of the 3 happened yesterday, and for the first time, I think in about 38 years, it is Suzuki riders finished 1-2, and I think in '82, it was Randy Mamola was one of the riders, and forget the name of the other rider who was Franco Ancini. Was it Ancini?
I think it was Virginio
Ferrari. Okay,
that's right.
And that was 38 years ago. So let's have a look at Nodell's notes.
Yeah, just bear with me a second here, Pat. I'll share my screen. And yeah, it was a really exciting race weekend at Valencia in Spain. It was this guy here, Joan Mir, definitely was the class of the field. He rode a really solid race. He started on row 2 in the 5th position, but he did end up going forward. And with Paul Espargaro leading on the KTM and his teammate Alex Rins ahead of him. And I would say probably half to maybe 3/4 time in the race, he ended up taking the lead, and he drove away or rode away from them. And it was a pretty textbook example of how to win a championship. He looks unstoppable right now.
Yeah, well, Suzuki's done a great job with these bikes after really trailing the Yamaha and Honda machinery for many years. So good to see the Suzuki's running at the front.
Yeah, they, it seems like it wasn't that long ago they were just getting back into the premier class, and they were sort of, second-class citizens compared to both Honda and Yamaha and Ducati at the time. And but now they seem to have the best package. They well-balanced bike. It handles very well. It's got good speed, and the 2 riders, Rins and Joan Mir, look totally dominant on them. So we'll see what happens with the next 2 rounds that are left. They're racing again this coming weekend at Valencia, but Mir has opened up a 37-point lead over Rins. And I guess on the flip side of the coin was Yamaha, who's had a total disaster where they had all kinds of technical sanctions against them with regard to some valves from a part supplier that they had changed that aren't homologated. They also had Fabio Quartararo. He looked very inexperienced this week, and you could see the anxiety in his face just when you're watching the qualifying session or the practice sessions leading up to the race. He just didn't seem to have it this weekend. And then inevitably in the race, he started out okay, but by lap 2, he did crash. He did try to pick up the bike and get back at it, but it wasn't his day anyhow. So now he really looks like he's on the outside looking in. And as far as the other Yamaha, I guess on a positive note for Yamaha, they had American Garrett Gerloff ride Rossi's bike for the first couple of days in both free practice 1 and 2. And he was pretty competitive. He wasn't, he was sort of middle of the pack in terms of lap times and stuff. And in mixed conditions, it was wet and drying in some spots. By all accounts, everybody was very impressed with how he looked on the track. So who knows, maybe in the next year or 2, we'll see another American in the premier class.
Well, Beaubier is going over there to run Moto 2. So I think you're going to see a lot of the top riders come out of Moto America and find their way over to Europe to run at least Moto 2 initially. And if they're good enough in that class, look for them to move on up to MotoGP. As you mentioned, Spain this weekend, and then they'll wrap up the championship on November 22nd at Portugal at the Algarve Motorsport Park facility. First time I believe they've held a MotoGP race at that facility. World Superbike has run there in the past.
Yeah, that's true, Pat. I think it's even been some time since World Superbike's been there, but I know you've personally been there and you said it's a beautiful facility. So I'm looking forward to MotoGP having their final round there.
Yeah.
Like I said, the season's still, again, it looks like Near's got a pretty good handle on the championship, but the fight for second through fifth is quite close. And we'll see what happens, as well as, Yamaha's had because of their infractions, they've had their constructors points, like 50 points taken away from them. So now I believe it's Suzuki that's in the lead and KTM's right there. So things have really shaken up in the World Championship. And then from the Rookie of the Year running, Brad Binder's overtaken Alex Marquez. Brad Binder had a great ride. He had to do a long lap penalty from the previous round. He had bumped with another rider, so he was penalized for that, but he ended up finishing 7th in the race. He had the fastest lap of the race. And I mean, the lap times were they had mostly wet conditions all weekend, so I'm sure the track didn't have as much grip as it would normally have. But last year, Mark Marquez had won with like a 1:33.1 lap time, and they were running, I think the quickest time was like a 1:33.7 or 1:33.8, excuse me. So they were a little bit off the pace from last year, but like I said, overall, Brad Binder has gotten into that Rookie of the Year championship lead, and hopefully they have a good race going from here for the last couple of rounds.
Okay, what else have we got on Nodell's notes this week?
Yeah, that's basically it. Just that it was mostly the story was about the Suzuki folks and how good they look, and I think fans in general are really. A lot of people seem to be genuinely happy for Suzuki. Just it's been such a long time. 20 years since they've won the championship, and now actually they had the team manager David Brivio, they had a heart monitor on him in the pit box during the race, and I think his heart was beating at a higher rate than the guys on track. So I'm sure when you're watching both your riders, it's like watching your kids and trying not to be a helicopter parent, but it was a pretty intense race, I'm sure, for those folks.
Okay, and Stuart, just one note, I got a text from Pete and Carol Swedish. Maybe you can send them the link. They have a bit of a problem getting on their old invited link on Zoom.
I'll send it to them.
All righty. So hopefully they'll be able to join us shortly. Joining us tonight on Track Announcers Notebook from beautiful downtown Hastings, Ontario, Sheena and Sandy Noche. And Sandy, we had you on a number of months ago. When you were just wrapping up a track day. I think that was during the CSBK round there at maybe on the Monday at Calabogie Motorsports Park. And we're here to talk about Calabogie because last week, Shayna and yourself, in conjunction with Colin Fraser, put out the release that there is a brand new 4-round Ontario Regional Road Racing Championship called Pro 6 Cycle GP. And as an X250 GP racer, I figured you'd get the GP acronym in there somewhere. But tell us about the genesis of this series. Did it evolve out of the work that you did this year working with Colin Fraser in getting the races you were able to get in during CSBK? In conjunction with your track days?
To a degree, we've because we love racing, we've constantly talked about running a racing series. We've always dreamed of being on that side of it. Just in life and in business, the timing wasn't ever right. And after experiencing a couple nationals with Colin this year and, really building our ties with Calabogie, we sort of were in a good position. And after nearly 30 years of running our bike shop, financially, we're more comfortable to take these new adventures on. So it's just sort of all played out even that our kids are just a little bit older now, and we have more time to dedicate to it. So yeah, we're feeling good about it. It's just in a good, it's a good position right now.
Yeah.
And Shino, from your perspective, was there a lot that you learned working with Colin and CSBK, the knowledge, the experience, the feedback you got that you can take into this regional series, that during round 2, that is also going to be on that same weekend, the July 10th and 11th weekend, the second round of the CSBK National Championship, and we understand that the opening round of that series is going to be on June 12th and 13th at Grand Bend. So a full CSBK schedule hasn't been announced, but we do know it'll open June 12th, 13 at Grand Bend, and then it'll be on the July 10th and 11th weekend in conjunction with round 2 of your championship. What is that weekend going to look like? Is the regional on Saturday, the national on Sunday, or is it going to be a combination of national and regional races on both days?
Yeah, it's going to be a combination. I mean, a big premise of us starting the Pro 6 GP series at Calabogie is to having a really solid club racing base that's going to be a direct feeder for our CSBK series, or as a reverse, as riders are looking to maybe not be as competitive. A lot of our core CSBK base, you know, there's a big age disparity right now between a lot of the younger folks and then some of the folks, you know, like Michael Leon and even over the past couple of years, you know, Jim Prue, Steve Walker, some of these guys who've been regulars who still are interested in racing and want to ride at a really beautiful track. And fortunately for us, we've been at Calabogie running events since 2007. So it's our home base. It's someplace we're really comfortable with. So when it comes to the national co-round that we're doing with the Pro 6 GP, we plan to have essentially the same class structure. So what we're going to do is, you know, we'll have Pro 600, or I should say Pro Sport Bike and Pro Super Bike. We'll have amateur sport bike, amateur super bike, and our lightweight class. And we're looking at something along the lines of an open masters or a masters class, something that a lot of the guys who run Pro Super Bike and some of the more experienced guys can get a second class in. That since all of our classes are so close to each other, that we'll just do a double points paying round, so to speak, for that one.
So that weekend is double points in terms of the regional championship. I looked at your dates, and there are a couple of conflicts, just one with SOAR, but there are 2 dates that conflict with the Super Series schedule that comes out. I know there are only so many weekends in a summer. Was your schedule based on what your traditional track day weekends have been over the last 10, 12 years that you've been running at Calabogie?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a contract and a working relationship with Calabogie that we take a minimum of 25 days a summer. So when you're trying to squeeze that in, especially as it's more northern Ontario, where you start a couple weeks later than we would get in running events closer to Toronto, and end a couple weeks earlier because of the weather, we really only have the end of May, you know, beginning of June to mid-September to squeeze in events. And traditionally speaking, all the weekends, if you look at our schedule from the last couple of years, are all pretty much in line with what we normally do there. So there wasn't any intentional conflicts. It's just kind of how it's played out. So.
Yeah, I know this year one of the complaints among pro riders was the elimination of any kind of prize money for the pro classes with the Super Series. Is that something you're addressing with the pro classes that you're going to run with the Pro 6 Cycle GP Series?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we've already been talking about, you know, as racers ourselves, and coming from that background, we both firmly believe that pros should have prize money. You know, and a big thing going into COVID, it can be challenging, especially starting out. We feel pretty confident that we've structured it that regardless we'll be able to pay prize money in some way, shape, or form, and carry that forward for pros.
What about the team that you've put together to run the actual regional race weekends? Are you using some of Colin Fraser's staff? Are you bringing in some new people that we might be familiar with?
I think it's going to be a bit of both. You know, both Sheena and I have been around the racetrack for many years. We grew up there basically, and so we bring a lot to the table. A lot of our staff and our fitters, and sort of my right-hand man, Sean Huffman,
Trackside.
are my trackside sort of guys. You know, I really rely on these guys to keep us rolling throughout the year as pro racers and mechanics. But are we at liberty to say?
Yeah, you know, Colin will be out helping.
Colin will be, you know, sort of coaching and helping and just being around as a support system at all of our regionals. And you know, we're happy to be working with Chris Chappelle and Jackie Prospero. Jackie doing timing and scoring. Again, over a decade of doing this job, and Chris as a referee over 2 or 3 decades doing that job.
He's just around 25 years now, and they both work regularly with CSBK. So
and VRA.
Yeah.
So they're pretty handy around the track. So we feel a lot more comfortable starting a new series with experienced people. So it's not that, you know, intimidating. So we're fairly confident that we're going to be able to address, you know, because of the experience that all of us have cumulatively, you know, address those issues that they've had, and you know, try to have it run as smoothly and safely as possible.
Okay, looks like we've got a few questions or comments. Let's go to Stuart so we can address those before continuing our conversation with Sheena and Sandy Noche. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. We do have a few comments in the Q&A here, and I guess the first one we did get, and it looks like Sandy just alluded to it, was about the race director, and it sounds like Chris Chappelle is going to be functioning in that capacity. So we did get that answered. The next question would be, is there going to be any sort of vintage class that they're going to make as part of the series?
Unfortunately, at the moment, we only have time in the schedule because the financial situation running a premium track like Calabogie isn't that easy. And we're working on the mainstream classes. It's going to take us a bit of time. If we could evolve the series into a 2 and 3 day event, that would be possible. But for 2021, that is not going to happen,
No.
Unfortunately.
No. Yeah, we're
you know, vintage classes within you know, the series just isn't. But if we can squeeze the bikes into our masters or into another class, and you know, Chris and I are going to work on the rule book, but we've had thoughts of already in lightweight allowing FZR 400s and RZ 350s, because I think it's a comparable you know, bike and speed, and EX 500s as well. You know, that's sort of the bikes that we rode as amateurs back in the 90s. So we're willing to work with people, and we're going to do our best to get as many people out on track as possible.
Yeah, but we also want to stay focused as we get things going and not take on too much. It's something we can build on, but as we're kind of going with a little bit of, you know, my background with the flat track format here, like the one and done. You show up, you race, you know, you have a beverage and you head home kind of thing in a single day. So when we work out the timing, which we were talking about with Chris and Jackie a couple weeks ago, we really only have room to fit in about 6 classes for the day in order to give them quality track time. So to start off, You know, it's a vintage specific class isn't really something that we can fit in just yet. But I think the VRA is probably working on some stuff for this year, from what I've heard. So I think you should probably still have a good place to go ride.
Sheena, speaking of one day, what does a typical schedule look like? One round of practice, time qualifying, and then into the races in the afternoon. And speaking of time qualifying, are you going to be using the CSBK transponder series, or what are you using there?
Yeah, we're working on what Jackie and I have been working on as an involvement from last year. Last year with COVID, because we wanted to make sure that we did our best to keep the client safe, we moved everything online, and we used an adaptation of the existing Pro 6 Cycle Track Day online registration system. But we're looking at going, taking CSBK as well as a new series independent and having a full online registration system that works with the Orbitz MyLap system that CSBK is already using. That'll make the event more streamlined, easier for timing and scoring as well. So Jackie's job is a little bit easier. She's working under, you know, a tighter schedule during the day. And everything will go online. The timing loop, everything's already in. All the infrastructure is present at Calabogie already. So it's just a matter of getting the software and the equipment, which CSBK already has. So one of the benefits again of working together is we can work together on sharing that equipment as well.
Sandy, you touched on the rule book. What is going to form the basis of the rule book? Is it going to be more of a CSBK rule book because you are running similar classes? Is it going to be based on horsepower, or are you going to rely on Chris Chappell's experience in all of the years of being involved with the Race Super Series?
Yeah, I think a combination of those three things is what's going to get us through and make most of the people happy. You know, we reserve the right to scrutinize, you know, a bike that's too fast or too light for the class. And we want it to be fair, we want it to be fun, and we want it to be as inexpensive as possible. You know, so if a guy shows up with $25,000 Olin's forks and he starts, you know, cleaning up all the classes, you know, we will have to do something about it. But you know, we welcome everybody right now. We're going to roll with it. We have a lot of experience. We know what works and what doesn't. I'm not really worried about the technical end of it. Again, we welcome everybody, and we'll take it as it goes.
I think we've got a couple more questions. Let's go to Stuart so we can take care of those, and then we'll continue our conversation with Sheena and Sandy. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I think actually it was Sandy really, again, brought on the point about, you know, saving costs and making the racing more affordable, and with Sheena's plan to do the single day events and sort of the thought behind that. I just thought it was interesting because when we had Jeff Williams on last weekend, he definitely was very pleased with how things ran at the CSBK rounds that you guys put on this year, and saying that the single day events really seemed to work. And he thought it would also be beneficial to get more people involved in the sport, because just people's costs are escalating. Even at the grassroots level, people are feeling compelled to hire, you know, people to do suspension work and data acquisition and all the technology that's required. It just seems like you need a real infrastructure to go racing at any level now. So he seemed to think that would be of benefit. So it sounds like you guys have a great plan in place. And we had some other comments. Just really, people seem genuinely excited and thankful you guys are starting a series. I think obviously the folks to the eastern part of the province and into Quebec are probably feeling left out through most of the racing. And it looks, and obviously Calabogie is a premium facility. So I think you guys obviously know, just from like what you said, doing all the track days, it seems like people plan their holidays and really want to go to Calabogie and make it, you know, an event. And it looks like a lot of people are looking forward to being a part of it. So that's really great news.
Yeah, Sorry, I was just going to say the one thing we really noticed when we did the national this year was the immense amount of riders we got from Quebec. Now, our track days normally see about a 60-40% ratio of Quebec riders to Ontario riders. But afterwards, like a call-in fun fact was that out of all the nationals, including ones historically that had taken place in Quebec, even Tremblant, the national at Calabogie this year was the highest per ratio percentage of French riders that a national had ever seen. So that kind of really opened our eyes a little bit too, that Calabogie can really be seen as a great kind of neutral ground. The Quebec riders really treated as a home track as much as our Ontario riders treated as a home track. And we thought, you know, we might be onto something here in terms of hosting a regional series in which the Quebec riders are really going to flock to as well.
Yeah, that's great. I guess the one question I was actually kind of curious about was, you know, being that you guys are the premium track day provider as well, do you see yourselves as kind of a conduit getting more people going from track days and transitioning into racing? Because a lot of people will talk about back in the 80s and 90s, there were some track days, but not like it is today. And now maybe more people, because they'll have the confidence in you guys and being a part of your events. Do you think they'll be encouraged to go and try a bit of racing, and how will you sort of, I guess, maybe create those opportunities for those folks?
Yeah.
Well, the winner of Amateur Superbike at Calabogie, the national this year, was a track day rider.
Yeah.
He'd only ever done one club race
Yeah.
before. I think second and third were also
We're regular track day riders at
Calabogie, and they were all Quebecers as well. It was an amazing, thing to watch. Like, we watched guys trying to win Amateur Superbike for many years, and these guys show up their first time because they've done so many track days there. They're so comfortable with the place. It's gone full circle. I think we were once blamed for hurting racing because people decided to do track days instead of race. But now in these changing times, we're pushing back to the racing community from the experience these guys are getting at track days. When you think about what we did, Stuart, back then, no practice, go out and race. I remember showing up and Colin turned me pro and sends me out, and I'm supposed to race against Steve Crevier and Miguel, and I was like, I was on an RZ 350 last year. I was amateur, and if it was now, I would probably go and do 20 track days first and then go race.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Back then it was just like, no, you're going, buddy. So these guys have that different opportunity to work into it, and then compare their lap times, and they're all watching the CSPK video footage and seeing where they should be, and it's a different world.
Sandy and Sheena, in terms of the different track configurations, have you finalized what tracks you're using for each of the 4 rounds of the Pro 6 cycle series?
Yeah, it'll be full track. It'll be full track. It really is kind of the best configuration. It takes a lot of manpower to run full track, but we've done the odd track day where it's just been stadium, and the entry into turn 1 off stadium, which we found the first year that they ran the national as well, is a bit of an issue. So, and then also how much speed you can carry through turn 1 up the hill through what is 9 and into 10, 11 is considerably different. And I think because we always run full track, it is something that most people are comfortable with. And it's really the most fun layout. It offers the most amount of passing opportunities. So I think that's what we're going to stick with.
What about, that is a long track, I think about 5 kilometers long. 2 things come to mind, tire or air fencing, bottle bags in terms of providing as safe a track as possible. And is it going to be a challenge to get the proper number of corner workers out to handle all those various corners?
I don't think so. That's the nice part about the single day events as well. We actually had more than what we needed in terms of marshals come out for the national this year. They're all pretty excited about it, and we have a pretty solid group of marshals at Calabogie. They've been great that come out, especially on weekends. So I'm not worried about the marshal numbers. Sandy and the kids and I went up with Chris and Jackie and some volunteers this weekend to Calabogie to do the winter prep for all the bottle bags. We did some rebagging, brought up some fresh bags from riders that they collected, and tarped everything and tidied up. And we're approaching the number of bottle bags that we were close to at Shannonville a few years ago. We're up over about 100 bottle bags right now. We have a full winter to prep, so we're feeling pretty confident in terms of what we have for barriers right now. We'd have a good amount as to what we covered, because we had a bit less than that this past year at Calabogie, and we had everything covered. So we're in pretty good shape that way.
Okay. Stuart, I think we've got a couple of more questions or comments.
Yeah, we do, Pat. What people are asking for now really is what's going to be the process for registration, and in terms of getting racing licenses, do they go through Pro 6? And will that allow them, if you have, I guess, the regional series that you guys are starting, will that be also good for using at the nationals as well, or is there a different licensing process?
Yeah, we're still working through the little details, and of course, like the money aspect of what we need things to cost, the costs. But it'll be very, very user friendly. I'm working on a specific area of the pro6cycle.com website that will be dedicated just for the Pro 6 GP, and then we'll also have a portal through the CSBK website for the CSBK online registration. But really, it's going to both websites are going to take you to the same spot. So on the user end, it's going to be pretty friendly. And we're working on, Colin and I have been talking about having one license for both series. So it's not a dual license. Like once you got your Pro 6 GP license, you don't have to then apply for a CSBK license. Once you've been vetted by us,
vice versa.
Yeah, then you're good to go. So that should simplify things. We'll have one set of numbers, and then your transponder info, and just make it a little bit more streamlined.
And then in terms of other resources that CSBK can provide on your regional race weekends in terms of tech inspection area, lights, and so forth, are those resources that you're going to be bringing to the series?
Yeah, we have some infrastructure with some lights and stuff at Calabogie already. So we're going to, of course, bring what's needed, but try to keep the logistics and the transportation costs down when needed and when we can. But the opening round of the Pro 6 GP will be the official CSBK test. So we'll like the preseason shakedown. So we'll work through a lot of stuff then. And then, of course, as we're sharing a lot of stuff, as we normally do, we'll be bringing along whatever we need to do that. So.
Yeah, in the media release, you talked about wrapping these regional races, all four of them, as well as the national on the July 10-11 weekend, with track days. Are those going to run both before and after, just in terms of riders being able to get additional track time, practice time, if you will, before going into a race weekend? Yeah,
so we're almost there. I'd say we're about 95% nailed down with our track day schedule for the year as well. We plan to have to start off the season at Calabogie with our track school, which will be our fifth or sixth season of the track school. Will be the 22nd and 23rd of July, so Victoria Day weekend, May, Victoria Day weekend, and then we'll follow it up on the Victoria Day Monday with our first track day, like a test day shakedown. And then we plan on having another track day on June 4th, which is the Friday prior to the first race that we're going to have. And then it'll be preceded by track days. So the way that normally when we would do Calabogie, we'd be Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So what we've done is remove the Saturday, dedicated it solely to racing for the events that we have, and then we'll still be preceded by track days. So riders, we found last year some of the track day riders that did stay and or did come up and do the national at Calabogie, they actually rode for the next 3 days for track days as well, or they took the Sunday off and they rode Monday, Tuesday. So some of those Ironmen and women will have the opportunity to stay and get some more riding after they race. But we do plan on doing some evening stuff as well. Calabogie, thankfully, we're allowed to do evening rentals, which helped us get through the tight schedule for the national last year, as we can rent till 7 p.m. So just for a little bit of an additional fee, we can rent the track in the evening and have that little bit of overage buffer if we need, which is great. So we're also considering doing just some evening track days, some affordable evenings. What we found is a lot of these riders have a lot of laps, you know, as happens when you've been doing events at a track for a really long time. So we wanted to give riders the option that didn't need the practice, that they don't have to attend. It's not part of the package. You can come, you can race, you can be home for church on Sunday if you choose to.
Okay. Since the media release went out about a week ago, what feedback have you received, first of all, from racers, and what feedback have you received from people within the motorcycle industry, any of the OEMs or major motorcycle dealers, in terms of interest in maybe sponsoring and writing a check to be part of this new road racing venture? Maybe we have a few of those online here tonight.
Sure.
It's been overwhelmingly positive. We're so thankful for all of the response. It's just made it easier for us to work hard and do our best. There's been like no negativity, and everyone's been really supportive of it. So we're pretty stoked.
Yeah.
And Sheena, what about you? What have the conversation been with some of the texts or phone calls you may have got?
Yeah, same. I think when we first shared it on social media, we had, I think within the first 24 hours, something like over 8,000 reactions, you know, tons of comments, tons of texts, emails. People are really excited. The Calabogie marshals reached out. They're very excited, which is great. I even had some old marshals from, you know, just that go the circuit at all the different circuits said, well, I guess I'm coming to Calabogie now next year because you're racing. So I again, like Sandy said, it makes it easier to work a bit harder. It's always a little nerve-wracking taking on a new venture, especially when you love racing as much as we do. You really don't want to screw it up. So to have that overwhelming positive reactions really encouraging.
Okay. Again, for those who are on our Track Announcers Notebook webcast tonight, if you have any questions, comments, just hop on the Q&A, send us those, and Stuart Nodell will bring those up here before we wrap up the show. Stuart, I think we're going to try to get for the last 5 or 10 minutes Pat Barnes to talk just a little bit about his experience at the Supersonic Road Race School yesterday up at Brecken Motorsports Park. But before we get Pat on here for just a few minutes, it was a gorgeous day yesterday. Not too often that it's 22 degrees Celsius, the middle of November. We're happy for that in September. Earlier, you touched on the whole Quebec experience with all of the support you've got from that province. with particularly Saint Eustache now closing, the tracks that Quebec racers or even track day participants can get to is very, very limited. Do you see, in terms of your entries, what are your goals in terms of number of entries, number of riders that you think you can realistically get, particularly for that opening round, because it is the warm up for the national that follows on the July 10th and 11th weekend? Have you looked at any projected numbers in terms of number of riders, number of entries? What are those grids are going to look like?
I think we're going to see over 120 riders at our first round. Hoping to see 150.
It's ambitious.
You know, 6 classes, 25 per class, and we're there. We were pretty close to it last year. Amateur Superbike and amateur sport bike had nearly that many, and it was a one-day, one-off.
Yeah.
No preparation, and let's go. Bringing this that we've prepared early. We're going to have prize money for pros. We're going to have a nice point system, and I believe a really nice structure that people are already telling me that, oh, great, I'm prepping a bike, I'm bringing out my old bike, and I'm working out, I'm getting ready. So I think we're going to see well over 100, and we're pretty excited about it.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Stuart, we can get our stuff on and be 2 more on the grid.
Yeah, Stuart Nodell's coming out of retirement.
It's a GP track. I
Yeah.
mean, you could win Pro Superbike on a 250.
Yeah.
He's done it before.
You could.
I'm
That's
past my best due date.
A future show. I think there's room for a 250 Grand Prix vintage class, if you will. I think there's still lots of those bikes around. 4 races this year. Looking into the crystal ball down the road, assuming this opening year is phenomenally successful, can you see that format of a regional road race for one day wrapped around track days expanding to 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 events? Are those dates available at Calabogie?
Yes and no. It varies. When we took on the exclusivity at Calabogie in 2009, we'd never run a weekend track day. We'd never needed to. We'd always focused our track days on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. We started to do weekends out of necessity because we wanted to offer the clients that a variation of days. And then over the years, our clients have focused more on weekends. Sundays are traditionally sold out across the board. They have been for about the past 4 years. So it's a delicate balance for us right now to take a for sure thing, a weekend that we know would sell out for track day and make us a good amount of money and tempt it with something that's new with the race series. But I think we're being conservative to start. It could definitely build, and if we could shift it for some of the weekends, we have those 6-7 weekends available to Pro 6 regardless. So we can do what we feel is right for our business with them. So it's definitely able to move into full race weekends down the road if the demand is there.
Stuart, I think we've got some other questions or comments that have come into the Q&A.
Yeah, we do, Pat. We've had a few people ask. I guess the first question would be people are asking if there's going to be trophies as prizes for the classes, and will it be like a top 3 or top 5? I don't know what you guys have planned, but that's one of the questions. And really, there's just a few other people commenting again that they're really thankful that what you guys are doing for the whole racing community. It's obviously very well received. So I think, like what Sandy said, you guys are hopefully going to see really good numbers, and you're going to draw a big crowd from the get-go. Hopefully people do get behind this. And I guess there's been some comments possibly that me and Sandy should get back racing on the 250s again. I don't know. I think I'm a better spectator now.
Yeah. Did you still pretzel in there, Stuart, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I did a race a few years ago on a 125. That was tough because I'm just not that small anymore. But I could probably handle riding a 250. It'd be fun, but it's definitely never going to be, my past due date has definitely passed, and maybe I can help someone else along. It's I still love the sport, but I think I'm better off on the sidelines.
So to answer the question, absolutely. We are already talking about a banquet next year and the lap record holders. I'm trying not to be too excited, but I'm super excited about all of these things and handing out amazing trophies to well-deserved people who earn them. Yes, we wouldn't run a racing series without that. Without, as racers, it means so much. My kids play with all my trophies now, and half of them are getting snapped in half. And there was a couple second place pro superbike ones around the house that are in two pieces now, and I love my kids more than anything in the world, but that hurt a little. So yeah, trophies to me, it was a big deal. I never missed. I wasn't one of the guys to not show up for my trophy. I was never too busy to thank the people that helped me and go and be part of the gang, and I don't think I've missed a banquet in the years I've been at the races. So that's a big deal. We're super pumped. Hopefully we get a good trophy sponsor or class sponsorship, but we're working on those things.
Yeah, and we had some great when we did the national last summer at Calabogie. It was all very last minute in terms of what we would normally put on, and very new to us. When Colin and I first, when Colin came to me with the idea mid-June to run it, I was really hesitant. Our track days were selling out like up to a month in advance. It was a lot of work in a short amount of time, but we had Propulsion Racing, Jamie Bruins, who's been doing suspensions trackside for us at Calabogie for years. Right away, it was like, I'll pay for the trophies. I want to sponsor trophies. And Perth Brewery has been working alongside One More Lap and doing sponsorship for Calabogie, and they drove up the day before the race and dropped off a bunch of cases of beer for the marshals, and we did beer on the podium instead of champagne, because I wanted to showcase someone who's already been they sponsor the track. Why use the Baby Duck champagne when we can use a local business who's willing to go out of their way to help us out. So hand delivered. Sherry and Jeff Williams Paving jumped in. Jeff was both feet ready to go. He was really the turning point to get us to run the national in terms of sponsorship. He's been one of our biggest our fans in the background, one of our biggest pushes. We had offers from some of the other racers. Sebastian Tremblay was like, I want to help. We didn't take him up on it because we got to the point where we're like, we're good. We don't want to take on more than we need. But from within the actual community, it was actually really astounding how many guys who were out racing who wanted to give more just because they appreciated what was happening. So we're pretty optimistic that we'll be able.
Okay. Sandy, in terms of Dunlop tires for the coming season, is there new DOT and slick tires that the racers are going to be running on, and when do those become available?
We're always working on new stuff. We're usually a couple of years behind, like with testing, or we call it X-Spec, is our experimental specification tire. We had some good success with some new compounds. Thomas Grolleman, one of our head engineers, is working on some new stuff that doesn't tear or cold tear. Thankfully at Calabogie, our products generally work very well there. It seems to work out that it's our home track and the stuff works there, but Yeah, we'll have some new compounds. We tested some at the later Moto Americas, a blend of the Q rubber and the regular race rubber. There's no more DOTs, by the way, Pat. We discontinued our GPA Pro last year.
Just focused on slicks.
This because all the racing series have gone to slick across North America. That we stopped producing. It's not to say that in our series you cannot use a DOT. If you could get one cheaper, you know, we have some on sale because they are discontinued stock. You're absolutely welcome to use that tire, or you can use the CSPK spec. So it is the rider's choice at the Pro 6 GP.
Okay, Stuart, I think we've got a couple of other questions that have just come in.
Yeah, we do, Pat. The first one actually was something I've thought, and we've actually talked to other guests about in the past, and that's like a mentorship program. And what's being asked is, you know, as an example, and I think they're speaking to Sandy, is having a former 250 rider be a mentor to some of the racers. But I've often wondered, you know, not enough people like ourselves, myself included, I'm just as guilty as the next person, but not sticking around the sport and helping others that are coming up behind us to share in our knowledge and experience, or even opening doors, like helping people get connected to different shops so that they have a trusted source to work with and build those relationships. So just wondering what your thoughts were on that, was Justin. And then Jacob is asking if there's no lightweight DOT tires, I think is a question.
Yeah, no, so we are with the mentorship program. Part of what we want to work on is, as a starting point, is to make the lightweight class at the region, at our club level, pro and amateurs. So there's a lot of great pros out there who, you know, to jump back out and ride a 300 is a lot of fun for them. And there's a lot of guys, you know, Alan Burns, Mike Graniowski, guys that are on 300s or 400s at this time, to get out there and really work with the kids. I know when I was racing flat track, when you got to the intermediate level, it was a huge goal to be able to go out. We had a 250 intermediate expert class, and you could get out with Steve B, John Parker, Kurt Beeger, that whole crew out at Welland, and really, you know, try to latch onto the pros and learn a bit. And that was just a really great class. So I want to strive for something like that with the lightweight class. I think it's really important for the new riders coming in to have those guys working with them. And we haven't actually talked about whether we're sticking with DOTs for the lightweight class next year, if we're going to go in the slick. We have both tires. Delmont manufactures a great slick and a great DOT for the 300 class, but we hadn't talked about that yet.
To be determined, but to answer the DOT question, sorry, when I was saying there's no longer DOTs, I meant a race DOT. What the CSPK spec tire has been for the lightweight class has been the Q3 Plus, which is our actual road legal DOT.
Mm-hmm.
It is a ride it to work and then race it on Sundays tire. So yeah, that's in a different category than our race DOT. The race DOT is essentially a cut slick, but
yeah.
So the cut slick is discontinued, basically.
Okay, and right now, sitting here November the 9th, we don't know whether fans are going to be allowed at racetracks at some point next year. A lot of good positive news coming out today about a vaccine. We'll see how that progresses in the next little while. But what is your best guess in terms of race fans being able to catch all of those races at Calabogie, and what do you have in place in terms of a public address system and spectator areas there at the track? It's been a few years since I've been to Calabogie.
Yeah. We're pretty optimistic in terms of being able to have spectators physically attend to some extent. Being Renfrew County and outside of kind of the epicenters of where the majority of cases are within the province, we've been pretty lucky. The track itself, we were very cautious this year. There was no children allowed, so no one under 18 was allowed in the paddock for the duration of the summer. And we also just stuck with a rider and one crew member. That's why when we did do the event at the National specifically, where we had the track day groups within, that kind of allowed us to have, because they were participants, that those physical participants could watch. Where when we did the National at Mossport, we had no spectators whatsoever. Each rider was allowed their 4 crew members, so they were in the pods of 5. You know, it's really challenging to say. We're optimistic, but we're planning both series. You know, worst case scenario, no spectators. We want to make sure that we're prepared for that, so that we can go ahead with racing and be ready to go in, to the extent that we did this year, minimally. And then if we can have spectators, it's, you know, just gravy.
It's a bonus.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you've got to be a pretty brave couple to start a new road racing series in the middle of a pandemic, but sounds like you've got a lot of great supporters, a lot of great ideas. You've got the experience and the infrastructure, and it sounds like the motorcycle road racing community is welcoming this announcement with a great deal of anticipation for next year. Let's go to Stuart for a sec to see if we've got any other questions or comments.
Yeah, there's just a couple, Pat. I guess one of the questions will be, will there be a TV package for the racing series next year? I would think at the national level, most likely, but obviously you guys would know more into that. And then we had a few people come on the call late this evening, so they were just wondering where they should be looking for future information on the series. Will it be on the Pro 6 Cycle website, or where should they be directed towards?
Yeah, we're working on I'm working on a specific area on the Pro 6 Cycle website that'll be just dedicated to the Pro 6 GP. So it'll have our class structure, competitor information, schedule, registration info. That's in the works right now with our web developer. And, you know, we'll be pretty active on social media on all fronts. I've stepped in to help Adam Roberts a little bit along the way and working on the CSPK media, as well as our Pro 6 media, social media. And we will have a dedicated social media account just for the Pro 6 GP, probably on Instagram and Facebook as well, and co-share amongst all 3. So we plan to just kind of put it out there. We'll pepper you guys with it, so it'll be a little bit of everywhere. Yeah, and then for the TV package, I mean, Colin's always working it. He's kind of a master of that stuff. He knows more about, you know, broadcasting and packaging a show than I probably ever will. So I just leave that in his capable hands. And if he asks, you know, for a little feedback, I'm happy to, but that's his department.
What about an official Pro 6 Cycle GP logo? Is there one in development? And
Yeah.
we invite you to debut it here on Track Announcers Notebook with any more news on the series.
Okay. Yeah, we our business partner, our very capable business partner, Joe Temperato, who runs a store in Toronto and has worked just about a little bit longer than I have, about 15, 16 years now. His partner Megan is a graphic designer, pretty experienced graphic designer in Toronto. She does a lot of our logo work and all of our design work, especially since we moved to the new shop a few years ago. So Megan's working on that. That's her department.
Okay. Stuart, any final questions before we wrap it up?
Not on this end, Pat. I just wanted to, again, thank Sandy and Sheena for joining us and sharing all this great news with everyone. And for anybody that's out there watching, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because then you'll be notified of all these shows in case you missed them. And I got to say a special happy birthday to our friend Pat Barnes, who celebrated his 60th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
Happy birthday, Pat.
I believe some beer was consumed at that event. We were hoping to get Pat on to talk about his day at the Supersonic Road Race School yesterday. We understand the Leclerc brothers were a little bit faster than he was. But we'll talk a little bit more with Tony Sharpless next year as she gets ready to launch a full season of the Supersonic Road Race School. And I think Tony may be creating some new customers for your road race series and those track days, Sheena and Sandy. So we've got, we're almost at 9 o'clock, so that's going to wrap up this edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. We're going to throw the checkered flag. Our thanks again to Sheena and Sandy Noche,